All right, on this episode of Bowks Talking Bouts, happy to be talking to an individual with quite the intriguing fight going down at MFL 20. It's happening on November the 27th. We have the vacant MFL bantamweight title up for grabs in the main event when Alex Gluzman and Scott Rodrigues get out there and test skills with one another. And happy to be speaking to Scott right now. How's the training and general preparations going ahead of this one here, man?
It's going good, man. Pretty much exactly as planned so far. No big injuries or anything like that, so I can't complain.
Yeah, is a lot of that just like training smart? Is it the recuperation kind of elements when you're not training? Like, what do you credit to, like maintaining the body and everything?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like we do a lot of rounds at our gym. We do a lot of hard sparring, a lot of hard grappling. So it's not uncommon for, like something to go wrong during a training camp. But yeah, just trying to be as smart as possible with the rest that we're taking. But that's pretty much it. I mean, I guess sometimes it's just knowing your limits is part of it.
And is that JKS MMA that you're getting in that work predominantly?
Yeah, JKS MMA is the only gym I train at. Exactly.
Yeah, because I was doing a bit of backgrounding there, and I was seeing that you train there, and also a level of being an instructor there as well. How does teaching technique to people further, I guess, hone your own individual understanding of the technique as a competitor? Because I've talked to different fighters who've served as instructors, and it really informs their own individual technique when they're out there fighting. Is it a similar dynamic for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think once I started teaching, and I don't teach like full time or anything like that. I mainly just kind of help hone the guys. I sub in sometimes, but really once I started teaching and once I started kind of like passing on the information I was learning, it's really what allowed me to get like a deeper understanding of a lot of it. So I would agree with whoever you spoke to who kind of had that same opinion, because once you start passing it off, people start asking you questions. You answer those questions. You figure out solutions to why they're struggling with something. It allows you to get like a deeper understanding of it, other than just the understanding inside your own body of how you were able to do that specific move or whatever it was.
Yeah, it seems like a supportive kind of dynamic within that group too, though. Like I was seeing on the JKS MMA social media a couple of years back, or a few years back even, they were shouting you out when you were getting ready for that, kickboxing fight at the Knights of Columbus Hall. So it seems like a great support framework.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I've been at JKS pretty much since I was 17. We're a small team, like we don't have a ton of competitors on the team, but everybody who competes is a killer, and we're basically like a small family. It's not like we don't have like 100 competitors or something like that. You know what I mean? So it's a small family, a community, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great dynamic to have, getting in that good refinement of the technique, but having the strong support there. But I kind of wanted to talk about the last fight there. I mean, getting the victory in the summer there at the 19th MFL event that they put on there. I mean, what was it like to just, get that victory there? And then also, I guess, as an extension of that, just be able to get in a second fight in the calendar year. I imagine that's a cool, compounded additional effect there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I wanted to, obviously with the layoff in COVID, kind of put a fork in everybody's plans. So I planned on coming back in, doing a good 3-4 fights before the break. This one would be my second one. So it was good to come back and get a win. Obviously, it's exactly what you want. I was pretty confident I was going to get that win on the last event, similar to this one. And really just trying to get as many fights as possible before the year's over. But I had another fight scheduled a couple weeks ago that ended up falling through. So we're trying to get as much as possible in.
Yeah, for sure. Got to try to capitalize while things are kind of popping off there. But yeah, you mentioned the...
We never know what's going to happen next, right? So...
Yeah, I mean, that's something that definitely has been imparted on me the last couple of years, for sure, man. But, to that point, the last couple of years, 2.5 some odd years since you had last gotten to compete, like, what was it like getting back out there in the cage? Was there a level of, like, fluidity, like, getting back to it? Did it feel like there was a pronounced layoff? Like, how would you characterize getting back to it?
Yeah, I mean, I never really stopped training. So it wasn't like it wasn't like I wasn't cold or anything like that. There was no, I don't know, I don't really believe in ring rust if you're still training. So like my schedule didn't really change, to be honest, like except maybe like a couple of weeks where we didn't train when it was like the beginning of everything. So it didn't feel like a huge shift or anything like that. It just felt like another fight. You know what I mean? We got out there. I was already training. I got the fight was booked pretty early. Like I think we booked it like almost 2 months out. So I had a lot of time to help prepare, and it wasn't really a big deal at that point.
Yeah, well, glad to hear it was like a casual sort of thing there. But just, talking about
Like any other fight. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, good to hear there's still the ability to, maintain the training there. Just kind of a hard landscape to tell sometimes because, like, some people, it seemed like their training dynamic was completely just, turned on its head, and you almost have to curate your own sort of camps, like in different fields and people's garages. Like, there was that certain stretch where that was very predominant for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the other reasons I'm lucky to have a small team, a small community, because it's not like a lot of people are getting split up or anything like that. Like the team that we trained together before COVID, we still continued to train together in COVID. Obviously, finding somewhere to train was a challenge, and didn't end up being that challenging in the end, but that's part of the game. But we never really stopped.
Yeah, consistency definitely key there. But, in talking about this upcoming matchup with Alex Gluzman, I mean, he came off that pretty tightly contested bout for the MFL featherweight title, but, getting back down to bantamweight for this one where he mostly has that experience there. Like, what are your thoughts on just what he brings to the table, like his main stylistic proclivities, like the big tools he presents as a fighter?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he won his last fight, to be honest. I watched the fight, and I was like, I thought he won. I was surprised to see, I forget the other guy's name he fought, get his hand raised. Poisson, I think it was his name.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's good. Like, I think he's pretty boxing heavy in his approach. Pretty, from what it seems like, counter heavy. So he's not, like, he doesn't go first a ton. But I just think I have a lot more boxing experience than he does, and a lot more experience than he does. So I'm curious to see what his approach is going to be against me, if he's seen some of my fights. But it should be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's a intriguing characterization and not like an off the beaten path one. I feel like there's a certain segment of people who also thought Alex won that last fight, which in that context would make him like a 3-0 kind of surging contender. And I mean, you're already a ranked bantamweight in the country here, but like, do you think that would be the kind of statement win, just caliber of opposition to, I guess, propel you even further along?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at this point, it's like, I think my original opponent for this was going to be Kevin Ossegi. Now it's Gluzman. At this point, it's just any guy who has the experience at MFL or FightQuest. Any guy who's taken those fights and they've won those fights, like, that's good enough for me. Just want to get the experience, get as many wins on the board as possible, to continue that campaign. So it's not like I wasn't really gunning for Gluzman or anything like that, but I'm happy to see that I have, a competitor in front of me who has some experience. He has wins already. He's fought for the belt. So for sure, it'd be a nice check mark to have a win over him.
Yeah, it seemed like more of a circumstance kind of thing. I guess the reason I brought it up in that context is just trying to get an understanding of like the, curve from the amateur scene here to what I presume would be an eventual transition into pro competition eventually. Like, do you have a defined framework or timeline for what you'd want to see on the amateur circuit before you, I guess, make that transition into pro competition, or perhaps not so much?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I'm not in a hurry. I'm still pretty young. Like, I'm only 23. So I'm not in like a crazy hurry to make that transition. What I'm really hoping to accomplish is that when I do make that transition and go pro, I can just hit the ground running and be a lot better than the guys I'm fighting, so that I can, I don't have to play at the lower leagues for too long, at the PKO or Samurai, whatever that is, and I can move up through the ranks a lot quicker, as opposed to some guys who, they go 6 wins, 5 losses over 4 or 5 years, and they never really make it out of the small circuit here in Canada, Quebec, or in the States. You know what I mean? So I would rather learn those lessons in amateur first, get the experience in amateur first, which is what I'm doing. And, that's why I'm not really in like a crazy hurry to make that transition.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. Like, even in my time, just following along with the sport, like what you were talking about, it would seem like some of the early pro competitions for some of these guys, that was almost like their version of getting the amateur experience in a certain way. But like that part of the sport has been, refined so much more, just even in my time watching, and just the talent level has grown so much there. Can you kind of speak to that too? Like, have you noticed that sort of growth in the amateur scene too? I mean, I guess you were saying you were kind of younger anyway, so maybe you caught just like that last little bit of that. But do you get what I'm saying? Is that kind of a fair characterization? Like now there's maybe a more defined amateur circuit as opposed to like guys having those amateur bumps and bruises, but in the early pro competition.
Yeah, I know. I completely agree, and I think part of it becomes just on how the sport is growing a lot bigger. More and more competitors are coming, so it's becoming harder to make it to the UFC, for example, or Bellator or something like that. Whereas before, it might have been easier because there's less competition, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the bigger it grows, the harder it gets. Like not many people go into the UFC without with losses on their record, right? So as it gets harder and harder to be put into those rankings, people want to make sure that when they're going there, they're getting a little bit sharper. People aren't just brawling anymore. They're learning how to fight a little bit better, and they're doing that at amateur, which I think is probably the better way to go.
Yeah, it's good to see that part of the sport fleshed out a little bit more and continuing to, get more fleshed out and comprehensive. But I mean, I'm kind of curious, like what the initial, I guess, entry point into MMA was. Like, was there a distinct, like, early memory you have of seeing mixed martial arts and being like, oh, this is pretty cool. Definitely something I'll follow along with.
Yeah, honestly, probably Never Back Down, the movie when I was younger. That was probably like the earliest memory I have of MMA.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if have you seen those movies?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's like the earliest memory. You gotta to be the best, you gotta beat the best.
Yeah.
I think that goes for like a lot of people in my age group on why it sparked their interest, and it was always something I wanted to do. And then pretty much one day I just kind of stumbled upon it. Like my brother got a free month at a gym at JKS essentially. He won it at a basketball tournament, and I took it from him, and I went and. 6 years later, I'm still going at it, training every day.
So the goal right from the rip was always to compete. Like as soon as you saw it, it's like, yeah, I gotta do that myself.
Yeah, I'm a super competitive person. It wasn't like I started being like, yeah, I want to compete. It was just I'm a competitive person, and as I started to see, I'm actually pretty good at this, then it kind of made sense. So I started competing in boxing. I started competing in kickboxing, jiu-jitsu. And then, a couple years ago, transitioned fully into MMA. But I kind of just took it as it came, I guess. I don't think when I started, it was like a lot of guys start and they're like, yeah, I'm going to be a world champion one day. I think that wasn't really the case when I started, but it just kind of made sense. Because I'm like, oh, okay, I'm pretty good at this. And I like it, right? So, and I'm competitive. So I had all those together, and that's kind of what I got is now I'm having a nice little amateur career here.
Yeah, it's been fun to follow along with so far, and going to be fun to see this one coming up here. But just, I'm kind of curious, like what you get up to outside of the, I guess, gym kind of dynamics. Like, do you have any decompressing kind of like hobbies or any like non-training activities you find yourself getting into and up to a fair bit, I suppose?
Not a ton, to be honest, which sounds kind of depressing. But no, I mean, like pretty much 90% of my friends, they train, right? So they're competitors as well. I'd say maybe the ones, like occasionally on Saturdays we'll go play basketball, get away from the gym just for like a couple of hours. But most of what I do is probably in the gym. Like I can't think of offhand any hobbies or anything like that.
I mean, that's fair. I think that speaks to the commitment that's needed from a sport like this when you really want to make a good run at it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I always grew up playing sports too, so I guess anything that I do outside of the gym is just another sport. Like before, I was in MMA. I played hockey. I played all kinds of different sports. I played soccer when I was younger. A year of lacrosse, things like that. So whenever I'm doing something that's not involving fighting, it usually is still involving some sort of activity, like physical activity, but not really more than just like once every other week or something like that.
Yeah, fair enough. And usually when I have the fighters on too, I'm curious to, get an idea of like what music they might train to and stuff like that. Like some fighters are kind of like, whoever grabs the aux cord at the gym, it's kind of whatever. Some guys like to kind of assume the DJ role a little bit. Like where are you at on that? Are you picking certain genres and artists in that regard?
Yeah, that's a cool question. No, I mean, honestly, I used to mostly train without music. And like when we're training out, somebody usually puts on music, somebody usually puts something. If I do, probably like what you would hear on Shom is usually what I'm listening to.
What you would hear on what? Sorry.
I honestly, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't really change anything for me. It doesn't really motivate me. Like I'll just put on the music if I want it, and if I don't, if I forget, I just don't put it the same.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that almost replicates the conditions of fight night too. Like I've heard certain fighters will almost train in silence to sort of replicate those conditions too.
Yeah, that makes sense. I never really thought of it that way. That makes sense though. I don't know. I think I'm pretty easygoing. Like I'm not picky on my conditions. I could train, like I could fucking sleep on a cot somewhere outside and train in the woods the same as I could train in a nice gym with all the stuff you need. Doesn't make a huge difference to me as long as I'm doing what I need to do.
No, fair enough, man. That's a good attitude to have. But you've been really good with your time as well, and I want to be mindful of the rest of your schedule, man. So to that point, Scott, is there anything maybe you'd like to kind of add as a parting thought as we're wrapping things up, man?
Not really. I mean, I appreciate you taking the time, and I like MMA Empire. I like what you guys are putting out, so it's cool. I appreciate it.
No, thanks, man. Great to have you on the platform, and it's an awesome platform to contribute to. So really appreciate you checking it out, and moreover, I appreciate you coming on and giving some insights ahead of MFL 20. I think it's going to be a great bantamweight title fight, and yeah, looking forward to seeing yourself and Alex Gluzman test skills there. So yeah, best of luck with the remainder of the preparation and all, and you just enjoy the rest of your day too, Scott.
Awesome, man. Likewise. Great meeting you.
All right, on this episode of Bowks Talking Bouts, excited to be speaking with an individual. It was quite the intriguing fight going down at MFL 20. It's transpiring on November the 27th. We have the vacant MFL Bantamweight Championship up for grabs in the main event. And we have Scott Rodrigues and Alex Gluzman testing skills. And happy to be welcoming Alex on the show once again. How's your day going so far there, man?
Pretty good. How's yours?
My day's been pretty good and everything. I mean, I'm curious as to when this fight initially got on your radar, though, because, I mean, you're still in a big opportunity here, contending for an MFL belt in a different division. Last time out, finding yourself in another title fight. Like, when did the bout offer kind of first come your way there?
Well, pretty much as soon as the promoter, as soon as they announced the card, immediately asked if I can get on it. I think it was like 2-3 weeks after that, which was like 3 weeks ago, he offered me. I was supposed to fight another guy for the featherweight belt, but they didn't want it. Or I think it was like injured or something. So they offered me a title shot at 135. Then, here we are.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious because, like, mostly you've been competing at bantamweight. That last one at featherweight, was that largely just a one-off because it represented a championship opportunity there, or could we see future instances of you fighting there?
I went to featherweight because there's no way I'm gonna make 135 when everything is kind of closed off during the pandemic, right? The title, yeah, that was also a big motivator, but like now that like the gyms are open and everything, I can make 35 easier. But I took the 45 belt. I took the 45 fight because there, like at the time, there was no way for me to make 135. So yeah.
Well, that kind of plays into my next question that I was going to ask about, because it seemed like the last time we were talking, there was a lot of pandemic-related hurdles, and you almost had to like kind of curate your own camp, as it were. So have you had more of like a normative like training inside of a gym space kind of thing, or at Jocelyn's MMA ahead of this fight here?
100%. And the last camp was good too, actually. For for more like in-house kind of training, it was actually like really good. But now, like here, right now, the gym, like Jocelyn's is open again. All the gyms are open. There's more people to train with, and it's better now.
Yeah, it just seems like a better landscape across the country now. I mean, at the time of this recording, we've got that BTC event coming up, MFL obviously coming up there that you're going to be on. It seems like there's quite a few events popping off in Canada. I imagine as a competitor, that gives you, I guess, a sense of relief. I mean, in my capacity as a media guy, I think it's cool, but I can only imagine how excited that is for you to see the scene kind of reinvigorating at least a little bit.
Yeah, I think as fighters, right? Like now that things are getting back to normal again, we've been we've as fighters, we feel like we've been locked in a cage like through the pandemic, and like just for everything to be back to normal again, we kind of feel like like we feel more free now, right? Like it's like I said, it's better now. Things are opening up, and it's perfect.
Yeah, well, really glad to hear that there's some return to normalcy on that end of things. But I kind of wanted to briefly touch on the last fight there because it seemed like that was a fight that was very close in a lot of people's eyes. The split decision against Olivier Poisson, and you were an individual too. Like you were saying, all respect to my opponent, but as you can tell based on my expression, not necessarily as happy with the decision. Like, what were the, I guess, main takeaways from that MFL 19 fight? 'Cause it was a closely contested bout all around.
Honestly, like I like Poisson. He's a good dude, and respect to him, right? He made me a better fighter. But you're not gonna tell me that I lost that fight. Now, I could have been, for sure, I could have done things better. I could have been more active. But you're not gonna tell me I lost that fight, right? And like even though he had me like in a corner, I basically won pretty much every exchange. I put more damage every time. He took me down once or twice, and I swept him. It's honestly at this point, like it's whatever. He has a fight coming up. Good luck to him, and it is what it is, man. He made me better. Moving on.
Yeah, I guess that's the only way to look at it, really. I mean, even your opponent. I was talking to him just a bit before getting to speak to you right now, and he thought you actually won that last fight there. So he was an individual that was even kind of surprised by that bout verdict as well. But like you said, just moving on. I mean, not much you can do at this juncture. Just seems like you're learning from it.
I mean, like I said, it is what it is. Like and him saying that is just like, it makes me feel so much better now. But you know what? He fought his ass off too. Hats off to him, right? Like, I don't know what else can I say? Like, it is what it is. Fuck it. Like,
yeah.
I learned, he learned, right? Obviously, we both got better, and maybe one day we'll meet again. And it's not, we share the moment. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to be looking at it. But in talking about your opponent, Scott Rodriguez, like I mentioned, I was able to speak to him, and he seemed complimentary of your skills in general. It seemed like, I guess, he was seeing his lane in the boxing more so. Like, I think he was thinking that would kind of be his path to victory. Like, what are your thoughts on, I guess, his stylistic proclivities? Like, what are the main tools Scott Rodriguez brings to the table as a fighter from what you've seen?
So I think he's one of the more well-rounded fighters in amateur right now. I think he's probably going to be, definitely a tough opponent. I think the only real thing that I got to be worried about with him is just like his potential takedowns. Other than that, I don't really feel threatened anywhere. Nothing, not to take anything away from it. It's tough, and I'm ready. Like, I'm getting ready, and we're throwing down next Saturday.
Yeah, I just really noticed like a strong wrestling game from what you've been able to see on him.
Well, Vince also, like, I watched a fight with Vince. Vince, like, we all know, like, and no disrespect to Vince, he's a warrior. He fights like a warrior. He does not give up. He's not going to go away. But we all know that he has no ground game, right? So when in the striking department was like pretty even, but once Scott took him down, we kind of figured, oh, well, that's all Scott from there. For me, the difference between me and Vince is the ground game. Like, we're both good strikers, but, I feel like if he were to take me down, it's like jumping into quicksand, right?
Yeah, so I mean, you think you have the greater skill set on the ground there? Because last time we were talking, I mean, we were mentioning the blue belt in jiu-jitsu and just like how much you drill it, especially in like an MMA kind of context there. So you're saying if the takedown comes on his end, you'll be able to defend off the back much better than prior competition, I guess.
And remember also, like, I've been a blue belt. I don't know, like, Scott obviously probably trains like Nogi. I'm not really, maybe he is a blue belt. I don't actually know his level, right? He is, like, from what I've seen, he's got some good takedowns. But also remember, like, my takedown defense ain't bad. And I've been a blue belt for a little bit now. I think this fight will be a lot more interesting on the feet. But I feel like on the ground, I pretty much have the edge.
Yeah, you talk about it being more interesting on the feet. Is that a byproduct of like bolstered confidence from some of the recent efforts there? I only say that in the context of like a few weeks back, seeing that you got your hand raised in your very first boxing fight there. So is there a bolstered confidence in the stand-up in that sense? Like, where does that come from?
Well, I'm like, as a fighter, right? Like, not just me. I'm speaking for all fighters. But for this fight, I'm very confident. Again, not to take away from Scott, he's proven, like, he's 4-1, right? Like, he's gonna come at me. He's tough. But I feel confident in this fight.
Just like the general preparation, because I mean, it seems like martial arts is very much a lifestyle sort of thing for you. So is it just like the level of, I guess, commitment you have to it that's informing the confidence ahead of this one, or do you just generally have that level of confidence through each of the bouts you've had so far?
Every fight, and I feel like, again, I speak for all fighters, like every fight we have, whether it's a win or a loss, right? They say you come back stronger each fight, or especially after a loss, and that's actually true. What happened last fight, it doesn't matter anymore. This is like, I'm not going to my last fight. I'm going to a different fight now. And everything that I've learned from a last fight is what made me better for this fight. So, yeah.
Yeah, and a win would just, do a lot for the career. I mean, I think a lot of people, like we've been talking about, thought you won the last fight there, so you have a degree of momentum. You'd be beating a guy who's ranked among the bantamweights throughout the country and, getting a very nice looking championship too, so a lot of different variables here should you, get the ideal outcome.
I think, honestly, on Tapology it said, like, I don't even know if rankings actually, never mind. The rankings never matter, right? Because the rankings are based on records, especially, like, at least in amateur anyway. Pro, you have a better view, but in amateur, from what I'm seeing, it's based on record, right? And even then, like, I think, like, maybe not for, like, you guys, but, like, Tapology itself said I'm, like, ranked, like, I'm ahead of Scott, and he has a better record than me, though. So at the end of the day, rankings doesn't really matter. That fight's a fight, right? I know what, like, from what I've seen, I'm prepared for what he has. I know what I have. May the best man win.
Yeah, well, that's just what it is. I mean, if you've got a number 20 or a number 40 next to your name, I mean, you still have a dangerous skill set all around. So it's kind of arbitrary at the end of the day, right?
100%, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And just, yeah, very intriguing fight coming up here, one I'm looking forward to for sure. I'm just kind of curious, though, as to, if there's anything you might want to add sort of as a parting thought as we're wrapping up here, maybe something that wasn't mentioned or anything of that sort.
All I gotta say is tune in. We gotta fight. Let's get it.
November 27th is when that's going down. MFL 20, we got that vacant bantamweight title between Scott Rodrigues and Alex Gluzman. And really great getting to talk to you ahead of another fight here, man. Appreciate you giving me some insights on everything. And yeah, just best of luck with the remainder of the preparations and looking forward to checking out the fight too. All the best.
Thank you, brother.